ICT involvement has been with us for a long time now, and the aspect that has taken root in the current dispensation is the perspective of artificial intelligence. If you watched the news yesterday, there was a discussion on Citizen TV, being hosted by a large panel, including the Competition Authority of Kenya, DG, Safaricom, and of course, other representatives from other organizations. You could see that AI has been with us for a long time. It's only now that people are realizing its importance and use. It traverses across all sectors of our economy, be it transport, education, health, you name it, security, defense. It's all there. AI is all around with us every step of the way. The phone that you use, your Google search, your transport or taxi hailing apps are all AI based, and for reasons that they make work or actually even production processes much easier. But that doesn't come without a bit of challenges here and there. And so perhaps what we need to do is try to see and try to encourage the responsible use of AI that is with us. And to discuss this further and also dissect the journey that AI has been with us, we have two panelists today. We have Mr. Muruk Muridi, who heads the CEO of Summit Strategies, who will try to give us the journey that AI has taken with the region, and also give us some usage cases far and wide. And now, just to try and top onto that, and in view of the commemorating the World Consumer Rights Day today, we have Boniface Committee, who is the Manager Consumer Protection at the Competition Authority of Kenya. He will try to give us the consumer perspective and what should be on the lookout for going forward. So as I introduce them, kindly, Mr. Miruk Muredi, be loading your presentation, and then we can have you go first to try and give us the lowdown on AI, what you think is happening, its use cases, perhaps the harms that you see that it portends for the country or actually for the individual, and how perhaps you think we should uptake or actually say responsible use of AI. And just to say, the theme for this year's commemoration of the World Consumer Rights Day is fair and responsible AI for consumers. So in as much as we make a representation, perhaps that should be at the back of your mind. So without much further ado, kindly Miruku Miredi, take it away.
Stephen, thank you very much. As introduced, my name is Murioki Muredi. I come from ICT background consulting. I've been working with IEA for quite a while, I think over 20 years, more or less in the advocacy of a better regulatory framework for ICT in Kenya. For today, first of all, I want to thank Steve and IEA for organizing this event to celebrate the consumer. Unlike other technologies, AI has a profound impact on the consumer, particularly on the choice that the consumer makes. It is therefore very critical to understand how to enhance the consumer benefits in today's world and also mitigate the risks, which are very critical. And for this, I want to thank IEA for having me. In my presentation, which I'm unveiling shortly, I'll be looking at, first of all, the manifestation of artificial intelligence in Kenya. How are we using it? And then what are the opportunities that we have going forward? What are the challenges that we are encountering? And also, how can we go ahead? Or what sort of recommendations can we try to encourage our government so that we are able to harness AI in full? And so with that, the first thing is, first of all, can we understand what is this AI? In my research, what I found is that defining AI has been a challenge. And so you'll find that unlike other technologies, unlike other phenomena, there's no clearly defined or globally accepted definition of AI. And this is in the context of, for example, the international organizations of UN. There's a lot of activities happening there, but none of them have come up with a definition of AI, apart from ISO. And ISO, International Organization for Standardization, has come up with a definition, and this is clearly technical, talking about some technical, a scientific, an engineering system, and then talking about some inputs, generating outputs, which are then can be consumed by the human being. That is very, very technical and may not be able to address our consumer issues. But it also goes about to discuss about responsible AI. And this is because of the challenges that we may encounter in how we use AI. However, whereas the UN bodies have had a challenge coming up with a definition of AI, countries around the world in trying to harness AI have their own definitions. So you'll find about a third of the countries who have got some strategies on AI, they also have come with their definitions, and which these definitions vary widely. The only groups that are very clear and have come up with definitions of AI are promoters and those who are giving us AI. So if you go to Microsoft, they are very clear definition of AI. Same case with Google, same case with Amazon and others. So from those who are providing the service providers of AI or exploiting AI, they are very clear with the definition. But at the governmental level, particularly the UN level, there is no clear definition. However, we also find that around the world, there's a lot of activity around the impact of AI. And this goes by responsible AI. This is driven mostly by the UN. AI for good, driven very forcefully by ITU, International Telecommunications Union. Other groups are interested in trustworthiness of AI, and then others like UNESCO is talking about ethics in AI. So there's a lot of work going on around the AI, but that's a challenge of defining. So when Kenya will be developing its own strategy, that is one of the things to encounter. How will Kenya define AI? So do we have AI in Kenya? Yes. At the consumer side, we are interacting with it over the last 5-10 years. And so every time we touch our phone and we want to do some e-commerce, buying a product online, we are interacting with the AI when we get the recommender systems. When we go to our website and we want to get some information, again, we get recommendations. All this is part of AI. But you'll notice that that AI, to a large extent, is driven by global organizations and is brought to our terminals of the phone, our terminals in the computer, and also in the websites that we visit. To a large extent, we don't have a lot of control on those offerings. Rather, we are consumers. But over the last few years, Kenyans have decided there's an opportunity that we can seize on from the AI. And so what I want to present to you here are some manifestation of how we are using AI. And I've selected some few sectors: agriculture, health, education, in government, in transportation. And this is just for illustration. And in all this, you'll see there are certain services being offered. For example, in agriculture, it is allowed crop monitoring, disease detection, precision agriculture, supply chain optimization. And those providing some of the key actors include what is listed there: M-Farm, Ujuzi Kilimo, Twiga Foods, iRobotics, iProcure. But on the other end, even as they provide the services, you'll notice there are some challenges they face, which is illustrated at the light side. So these are areas like, do they have enough data to train their AI systems? Do they have the skills that are required to be able to offer these services? How about infrastructure, internet spread across for particularly the users, and also for them to be able to capture this data, host it in the lighter environment, and also distribute and reach out to the consumer. And of course now, change management to the farmers to be able to use. Now, what we see in agriculture is replicated in health, where we have services being offered, there are some challenges, and we also have some actors. The same is replicated in education. We are already using it. In government, one of our key actors is Kenya Revenue Authority, just to make sure that you are tax compliant. And also other government services where we use chatbots to be able to engage with the government services and get support, the assistance that we need, and transportation. I've missed out, I've not included some other areas, for example, in finance, where fintechs are very, very active. So one thing that I'd like us to note from this is that a lot of the drivers, as you'll see on the key actors, a lot of them are startups. M-Farm, Ujuzi Kilimo, Twiga Foods, Diagnostic Healthcare. And so these are organizations that are coming up with very, very good ideas, developing. And so some of the challenges they face is what is listed as unique challenges as they do. And then, of course, what you have not mentioned here is about their own capacities in terms of financing. And at the end of it all, there are a lot of regulatory issues that we have to surmount in terms of regulation, in terms of the infrastructure that need, and of course, there's a whole issue around data. AI requires a lot of data for training. A lot of this would be personal data, yet how do you access personal data? There has to be a framework on how this data can be used, and this is the area that is being driven by our Data Protection Authority. So we are there, but we have some way to go, and government needs to come very strongly on this to be able to chart the direction to make us be able to benefit on AI. What happens if we don't? It means we'll be competing with other countries who are harnessing AI and therefore getting the benefits. And if we don't harness the benefits, there are some risks. And these risks also include how we use it. And so in this slide, I'm talking about even as AI comes, is manifested in our daily lives in Kenya, there are some areas that we need to talk about. First one is job displacement, and I'm talking about displacement. As we use AI, we notice that in other industrial revolutions, they were more or less mechanical, looking at repetitive jobs. A lot of it was repetitive jobs. But now AI is targeting our cognitive aspect as human beings. It's talking about listening, and therefore, instead of the blue collar workers, we are now talking about the white collar industries. And if we are not careful, what happens is that the sort of repetitive jobs will be taken away. Are we prepared to prepare our workers to be able to use AI as a support system in the new evolving situation? We require a lot of data, as I mentioned, and as we use this personal data, can be used for surveillance, compromise privacy rights, if not regulated. How is our framework? Last 2 years, we have the Data Protection Office. How is it working towards ensuring that our privacy rights are not compromised? There are also security threats. There are vulnerabilities in the systems, and this can be used for cyber attacks and data breaches. There are very serious ethical concerns. How we train those systems determine the outcome. So depending on how it's trained, when I try to access some learning facilities, depending on how it has been trained, I can be locked out because of some certain specific features introduced in the training. And then there are gaps in infrastructure, which we have to cross in terms of how we store data, how we capture it, how we share it. All this can be a challenge. And those who have more information than others, to what extent are they going to use it to weaponize this data? Skills gaps, that's another serious challenge. We continue having, as we have noted there, uh, inadequate skilled professionals on AI. And eventually, finally, regulatory issues, and particularly unlawful content moderation. So Kenya as a country has been walking this journey. And as early as 2018, the minister commissioned a task force under Professor Demo, and it was to look at the emerging technologies, blockchain, including AI and others, and then understand it, and then see how can we move forward as a country. And so they came up with this document and report. And some of the one recommendation they made on AI is, first of all, develop policies promoting AI and protecting human rights. Then create an AI ecosystem, and then eventually implement mitigation measures around AI. That was 2019. Those recommendations are still very nicely packed in the document, but they have not yet seen the light of the day. It is only now that the minister launched a task force to go around the country and review the ICT environment. I'm just hoping that AI will be one of the recommendations. Even as we are struggling, you'll notice on the light, some countries are not. They are very clear. And one of them is our neighbor in the East African community. This is Rwanda. Last year, they came up after talking to their stakeholders, they came up with a national AI policy. We don't have it. And for them, they are very clear. It's to leverage AI to power economic growth, improve quality of life, and position the country as a global innovator for responsible and inclusive AI. Now, if we compete with those Rwanda, it means they are very clear with the direction and how they are going to use it. We are yet to be clear, and therefore that competition is not even. And so the benefits of AI we have seen, they are likely to tap it more than we can. Sorry. And so, where are we? I wanted to compare Rwanda with Kenya. And using the Government AI Readiness Index of 2023 last year, published by a group known as Oxford Insights, using a lot of data, and all this data comes from UN agencies, then corrected for the purpose of comparing where countries are in terms of AI. Last year, Kenya was 101, number 101 out of 193 countries. So it's almost closer to the end than from the beginning. Rwanda was ahead of us at 84. And if you look at the three pillars that are used, government, technology, and data infrastructure, Rwanda is ahead on areas of government. So the chart on the right has to break down those components. And you'll see that whereas in the other areas, Rwanda and Kenya are almost at the same level in terms of governance and ethics, digital capacity, adaptability, maturity of the infrastructure, innovation capacity. We are far better in terms of infrastructure, data, that is data centers, the internet penetration, the availability of devices for us to be able to use it. And then data availability, we are at the same level, but there's one key area that Rwanda is ahead of us. If you look at the vision, Rwanda scores very high, Kenya scores 0. This is an area of concern. They know where they are going, and because of that clarity, they are likely to be able to look at all the dimensions that they need to look at so that they can be able to tap AI. This is what we need to look at as a country. But today, so that we give the consumer the benefit of AI. Some stakeholders in this country are also not left behind. They are saying, yes, we need to do something about it. So there's a group of AI practitioners. They have been meeting as stakeholders in AI, recognizing the advantages of AI. And so they came up with a framework to guide their activities. And also that could be a basis that Kenya as a country can be able to come up with a framework and policy framework, regulatory framework, strategy on AI. And they talk about corrective lights. These are lights to both individuals and communities. And that innovation, the government to encourage innovation in AI by implementing policies that promote establishment of regulatory sandboxes. And the key word is sandboxes, because a lot of these technologies, we are not sure which way they go. And so the framework is look at our regulations and then create the necessary environment to test through sandboxes. Come up with tax incentives. We say that most of the actors that we saw were all emerging startups, and they need support. Then the public, and in this case the consumer, needs to be engaged all through the development of AI, particularly because of the risks. We need to have a national strategy. We have seen what Rwanda is doing. And then for those who are impacted by AI, there should be some remedy. And then Kenya cannot function alone, and therefore it's necessary for Kenya to work within the East African community and then within Africa, and therefore needs to engage with the other countries. Like Rwanda with a policy, like Tunisia, like Senegal, like Mauritius, like South Africa, who have all come up with an AI framework. And I would like to propose a way forward. In 2021, Kenya joined 193 countries and under UNESCO, and discussed about the emerging AI and came up with a framework. And this can be an inspiration for Kenya to move from the position it took then with the 193 countries to develop a regulatory framework, a strategy, and also how this is going to manifest to be in Kenya. And for this, UNESCO approaches AI in the context of an intelligent behavior, and that AI includes aspects of listening. That is why it's different from other evolutions of learning. There's a lot of perception, prediction, planning, and control as part of the components of AI. And UNESCO and the other 193 countries came up with a framework of the policy actions towards developing a strategy, a national strategy. So the first thing is, first of all, an ethical impact assessment, ethical governance and stewardship, a data policy. What we have right now, we have got a data regulatory framework, development and international cooperation, we have mentioned about it, environment and ecosystems, gender must be taken into consideration, the cultural setting, we don't have to import the developments from other countries, education to skill our experts, communication information infrastructure, data centers, internet infrastructure, the impact it has on the economy and labor, health, and social well-being. So this could be a basis under which Kenya can be able to move forward so that we have a regulatory framework and we have a direction, a vision, a regulatory framework to be able to harness AI. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Muriuki. That was a wonderful presentation, giving us the lowdown on AI and a host of perspectives to look out for. But before I allow for questions and answers, kindly, Mr. Boniface, be loading your presentation. So, Mr. Boniface Committee, kindly take it away.
Thank you, Institute of Economic Affairs, and thank you, participants, and Mr. Muriuki Mureithi for that great presentation you have given. I hope you can all see my presentation. And as I move to the next slide, my focus of the presentation would be the regulatory framework governing AI use in Kenya. We'll look at the types of harms that artificial intelligence portends for consumers. I'll look at the challenges of AI in Kenya and basically the consumer rights and principles for safe and responsible AI. I will not really belabor on what Competition Authority of Kenya does, but generally, we basically, our role is to regulate the market structure, market conduct in Kenya, and we also have a consumer protection mandate. By regulation of market conduct, we approve all mergers and acquisitions. In terms of, that's in terms of market structure. In terms of market conduct, we investigate restrictive trade practices and consumer protection. We receive and investigate complaints, consumer complaints. We also have an advisory role to the government. And most importantly, we investigate what I would call abuse of buyer power. And it is through our mandate that we're able to kind of investigate and see what is happening in regards to AI in Kenya. Now, Mr. Mureithi has really gone deep into what artificial intelligence is. So I'm not going to belabor on that particular point, but I will go straight on the regulatory framework governing AI use in Kenya. And also just to comment that Mr. Mureithi has brought out very, very clear, and it is true, that Kenya has not implemented any specific regulations solely focused on governing AI use. However, the government has been considering various measures to regulate emerging technologies. But most importantly, if you look at the regulatory framework in Kenya, the advantage is that we have the building blocks into what would form the regulatory framework. We have the Constitution of Kenya 2010, that provides a framework for protecting the fundamental rights and freedoms, including privacy and data protection. And these constitutional provisions then can be applied to regulate AI use indirectly. But as I said, there are no specific laws addressing artificial intelligence. I've talked about the data protection laws. There's a Data Protection Act of 2019 that also establishes the Office of the Data Protection Commissioner. And we have seen in the recent past the work they have done in regards to data protection in the country. Their legislation is quite detailed and has provided the context, and they have gone ahead to even penalize some companies, especially in the digital lenders, that have infringed on the privacy of consumers. So they regulate the processing of personal data and also provides guidelines for data protection. Then there's a specific sector regulations. So, for example, if you look at the Kenya Information and Communications Act of 2013, that also establishes the Communications Authority, then they are able to, in one way or another, regulate or regulate artificial intelligence. We also have some financial sector regulations, for example, under the Central Bank of Kenya Act. And we see that recently there were the regulations on the digital lenders, and they're required to register or to be licensed by the Central Bank of Kenya. And if you look at the conditions for being licensed by the bank, it has some aspects of consumer protection. It has aspects related to AI, although not as detailed as we would want. And similarly, there could be, in the health sector, there could be instances and guidelines, or there are guidelines for AI applications in medical diagnosis and treatment. However, if you look at some of those guidelines, I wouldn't say they are detailed enough to provide the protection we would want to see for consumers, or to address the potential issues that would arise from AI use in the medical field. In terms of policy initiatives, we know through the Ministry of ICT, Innovation and Youth Affairs that they have the capacity to develop policy initiatives and guidelines. I like what Mr. Muriuki has brought out in regards to the national AI policy, which we are lacking in Kenya, and which Rwanda has, because the genesis of really having a way forward, not just in terms of how AI can benefit Kenya, but also looking at the regulatory framework and the specific organizations or government agencies that can look at AI would the genesis is a national AI policy. And I think that's the conversation that we need to be having in terms of coming up with a national AI policy. However, that now should be generated from the Ministry of ICT. We see that from the Kenya Kwanza manifesto, when you look at the current government's manifesto regarding and its priorities, and its core pillars, and the 5 sectors that that it looks at, there's an aspect of digital superhighway and creative economy. So for that to really work well, for the government to be able to achieve the digital superhighway, sort of what they are proposing for Kenya, then we need to have the conversation of having a national AI policy. And that would definitely be able to guide, and we'll be able to borrow a lot from the international standards and guidelines, because as Mr. Muriuki has indicated, that other countries have really moved ahead and would be able to borrow and probably align to what would be the best fit for Kenya. So in terms of future developments, we know that there's rapid advancement. We have 5G in Kenya. We have a lot of impact of what is happening in terms of AI in Kenya. We can also see, and Kenyans are a lot of tech savvy. We have the benefit of high-speed internet. We have systems that we have developed that would really help in the promotion of AI in Kenya. So it is important that we really look at the regulatory framework, but it would stem from having a national AI policy. But then I'll go next to the types of harms that artificial intelligence portends. And Mr. Muriuki has also touched on some of the harms. And I'll go specifically, not just looking at the harms, but I'll also look at some of the cases the Competition Authority has received and investigated. I would like also to state that we work with other government agencies within this space. We have signed MOUs with the Communications Authority of Kenya. We are also working with the Office of the Data Protection Commissioner. And one of the major harms that we have seen, that we have in this particular economy, are issues of privacy violations. The privacy violations, and I'll give you an example of the digital lenders. If you see what has been happening of late in terms of the mobile loan apps, we have received complaints where somebody owes money to a digital lender, but they have gone ahead and gotten into their system, obtained contacts of the key persons, close relatives, and even colleagues of that particular person, and went ahead to write to them that, for example, committee owes 5,000 shillings and he has refused to pay, and basically malign my name or the name of the consumers. And that is and this is one of the harms that AI portends for consumers in terms of privacy violations, unauthorized access to personal information, data breaches, and unauthorized surveillance. We are yet to get complaints in terms of unauthorized surveillance, but we have seen in the recent past instances where even Airbnb have indicated to the vendors that they should not have cameras within the premises. So we are probably seeing instances, and the conversation will basically start in the future, where some of these harms will be discussed, especially surveillance. I know access to personal information is a big thing now, and the Office of the Data Protection Commissioner is working in regards to that. But there's also an aspect of discrimination and bias as a harm that would portend to consumers. We know the algorithms that are set in place may inadvertently perpetuate or exacerbate biases present in the data used to train them. We have seen they could perpetuate biases in terms of hiring, in terms of decisions, in terms of even in the financial services. And most importantly, what we are seeing in regards to discrimination and bias is in relation to e-commerce. Some of these companies are perpetuating what would call dark commercial patterns. So they would apply some systems or algorithms that would compel the consumer to be able to probably purchase a product. One of the things that we see are issues of drip pricing. It would present a price to you at the start of your experience in the e-commerce platform, but by the end of when you're now clicking to go and make payment, and you see the price has increased, they may have included shipping costs, but they will not disclose other costs. So the AI algorithm would probably bring about some hidden fees and charges that would be presented to you without you being aware that that is happening. So there are quite a number of harms that would happen, especially in e-commerce. And you know, e-commerce is really growing in Kenya and Africa, and also definitely at the rest of the world. Now consumers are purchasing products across borders, and we don't know the extent of the violations against consumers. But as the Competition Authority of Kenya, we are working with the other agencies across the world through the auspices of the International Consumer Protection and Enforcement Network to be able to map out some of these violations and to create what we'd call a system where we could share non-confidential information, and where such complaints that we have received from consumers against platforms that are domiciled in those other countries can be resolved. The third harm that would portend is security risks. And this also has been brought out clearly by Mr. Murioki. There could be issues of cyber attacks. So I do not want to belabor on that particular point. But there's also aspect of job displacement, which has also been brought out. Now we are seeing advertisements that are being generated using, with AI generated images. We are seeing now videos being generated through AI. You can imagine what that will portend to the industries here in Kenya, to the medium, small, and medium enterprises. So we have to have, as a country, that sort of direction, which will be guided by the national policy that will be able to guide us and tell us this is how Kenya wants to proceed with regards to AI, knowing that there are benefits to AI, but at the same time, we know that there are risks to AI. There are aspects of misinformation and manipulation through AI-powered algorithms, which can be used to generate and disseminate misinformation and manipulate public opinion. We have seen that happening in the past, and this is a harm that AI can portend. But also health and safety risks. There are applications we are seeing in agriculture, in healthcare. We are seeing now electric vehicles coming in. Then there are concerns that we can raise in terms of reliability, accountability, and safety. There are instances where errors can happen or malfunctions in some of those AI systems. Now, in the medical field, we are seeing the use of technology to undertake surgeries. It's very, very efficient. It's good for the patient, even in terms of the healing process. But have we looked at the ethical side of it? Have we looked at the aspect of when they fail and a surgery is going on, then who bears the ultimate responsibility of because something has happened to that particular consumer? These are discussions that we need to really have on an in-depth basis. And also financial exploitation as a type of harm. There are issues of predatory lending practices, market manipulation. And I can tell you as the authority, we are looking at our guidelines. We are looking at our regulations on not just on consumer protection, but also on competition. We want to bring about, and we have seen that it is possible to manipulate markets through artificial intelligence. Already other countries, other competition agencies across the world are looking at issues of how these digital platforms can manipulate markets in order to strengthen a dominant position, for example, or to manipulate markets, or to perpetuate what we'd call restrictive trade practices. So the authority is also relooking at some of its guidelines, and in order to bring this conversation into play so that we are ready for some of these things that may happen. The other harm, I would say, is loss of autonomy and control over decisions, control over personal experiences because of AI-driven recommendation systems, and obviously ethical concerns. So I'll go to the next aspect of the challenges of AI in Kenya. And we see that the infrastructure, whilst Kenya would have or has infrastructure that has supported digital growth in Kenya, but do we have, the infrastructure is still limited and a limited access to technology. We have reliable internet connectivity, and I know there's 5G, But without the relevant infrastructure, we cannot take advantage of the hidden potential and take advantage of the hidden potential that we have or the benefits that they could bring. The second one is on skills gaps and education. We have a shortage of skilled professionals, although we are doing quite well. And I think we have institutions or private organizations that have an interest in Kenya and AI. At the authority, we have seen an increased number of companies that want to merge or would like to acquire or put in or joint ventures in relation to technology growth in Kenya. So that's a good thing. And I think as they come in, then we should be able to increase the skills, and education in Kenya. Another challenge would be the data quality and availability. There's available data, but the quantity, especially in sectors such as healthcare and agriculture. And I think we need to really look at how to get the data, quality data, that would give us the necessary information that we can use to deploy AI systems to be able to push, especially in such areas such as healthcare and agriculture. So, and that is what is lacking in Kenya. But and also one of the other challenges which highlighted at the start was on the regulatory and policy frameworks, which Kenya lacks comprehensive regulatory framework, and there is need to have a national policy for Kenya. Challenges also include ethical considerations and bias, resource constraint, because AI is quite heavy in terms of what would be need, the resources that would need to deploy AI resources in Kenya. So here, then, collaborative initiatives need to be pursued. Public-private partnerships need to be pursued and access to funding opportunities. And all this, I think, can be discussed within the context of a policy framework in Kenya. And it is so encouraging, as Mr. Muriuki has indicated, that there's a team of professionals that are already meeting to discuss some of these issues. And I think involving government and pushing it from that perspective in the interest of a public-private partnership would be able to enhance this conversation and lead the country, lead Kenya to that sort of vision that you'd want to see. So therefore, what I'm basically saying about this, addressing these challenges, is that it requires a coordinated effort between government, academia. We need the industry stakeholders, and also civil society would play a big role in pushing for this conversation. And also definitely the investments in infrastructure, education, and regulatory frameworks would be important, and not to mention ethical guidelines. And that's how we can be able to unlock the transformative potential of artificial intelligence. But what are the consumer rights principles and for safe and responsible artificial intelligence? Today we are celebrating the World Consumer Rights Day, and the discussion is on fair and responsible artificial intelligence for consumers. And we are now a global village, and AI is not just relates to Kenya, but also relates to across the world. So some of the important principles that we can be able to discuss are the right to transparency. Consumers have the right to transparency regarding the use of AI systems. We now see that when you open a website, there's an opportunity to click on a button that enables you to agree whether you'd want cookies. You can click a button, and that is what we want to see. We want to see the transparency of some of these applications to consumers, because AI developers then should disclose relevant information about their algorithms, about their data sources, and decision-making processes. I think in the last few years, and we receive messages from sources that we do not know, telling us that we can take a loan, that we can benefit from financing from a certain institution, and we don't understand, and we wouldn't know how they got the data, how they got my personal information, and why they're even sending me that information. So we need to have that, and I think right to transparency is an important consumer rights principle. The other one is the right to privacy. I cannot overemphasize this. The right to privacy, the right to data protection in the context of artificial intelligence. We are seeing from social media the violations against consumers in relation to their privacy, in relation to their data. Consumers should have control over their data and be informed about how it is being used by AI systems. The other one is the right to fairness and non-discrimination. You see, developers should ensure that AI algorithms are free from biases and discrimination, based on factors such as race, such as gender, ethnicity, or religion, or socioeconomic status. So then mechanisms then should be deployed by algorithm developers to ensure that this is not happening, but also for regulators like the Competition Authority of Kenya. What mechanisms or tools can we be able to deploy to detect and mitigate such bias? And when I talk about such bias within our mandate, I indicated that there are companies that could perpetuate or strengthen a dominant position, or undertake restrictive trade practices, or manipulate markets, or perpetuate what we'd call dark commercial patterns, infringing on the rights of consumers. Then the other one is the right to accountability and redress. Consumers, and you also consumers, you have a right to accountability and redress in cases where AI systems actually cause harm and make erroneous decisions. So what systems are being put in place to ensure that this right is made available to you as consumers, and also for redress? You could have a complaint against a certain digital platform which is domiciled in another country. Then what systems have been put in place to ensure that there's an online sort of dispute resolution mechanism that will guarantee you that redress that you so seek? Most importantly, the right to safety and reliability. We need safe and reliable AI products. You as a consumer, you have a right to human oversight and control. We need to have AI systems where you as a customer, as a consumer, would retain the ultimate control and responsibility on how it affects you and your life. You have a right to a design that incorporates, that takes into account ethical guidelines and responsibilities. And most importantly, you have a right to education and awareness. We need to know what is happening. And as the authority, we are putting together what we'd call, especially in relation to AI, information that we are going to start sharing with the general public in regards to AI. But most importantly, because of our advisory role to the government, we have already put together some position papers that would be able to present to the government in terms of enhancing the rights of consumers in artificial intelligence. Thank you very much.
I'll try to do a bit of a summary into what we've discussed today. So both speakers have highlighted the profound impact of AI on consumer behavior and choices. I gathered that there was the emphasis in its manifestation in Kenya, discussing how AI is being utilized in the country in the different sectors from agriculture to health, some of the challenges and opportunities, and just a few recommendations for government to be able to fully harness AI. So one of the key challenges from the top was that, AI doesn't have a universally accepted definition. And it was noted that AI adoption in Kenya is largely driven by global organizations. So that has a limited domestic control over somewhat its implementation. So some of the challenges that both our speakers have mentioned were lack of data availability. You have the data privacy issues, the scarcity of skilled professionals, the main one also in the room being the lack of a regulatory framework from which we can borrow from other countries that also have this. And it was also just good that Bwana Committee also brought in the aspect of some of the issues that the Consumer Authority of Kenya has investigated, from the digital lenders having manipulating using data from consumers to try and intimidate the consumers to pay. So that was actually good, and I think this also necessitates for a more comprehensive regulation and policy tailored just specifically for AI to safeguard consumer interests in Kenya's evolving digital landscape. And then we were also taken through, some of the consumer right principles for safe and responsible AI, talking about transparency, privacy, accountability, education, and awareness. And because I was not one of the speakers, that was just a short summary so that I don't end up making another presentation. So I guess at this point, we can move into the plenary session. So how it works is if you have a question, you can just type it directly in the chat box and I will read it out to our presenters. Or if you prefer to ask your question orally, you're welcome to do so. You'll just raise your hand and then I will pick you and you can do that. So the session is open to ask questions. So I'll give the opportunity first to anyone who has a question. I can see Michael. Okay.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, Michael. I can. Go ahead, please.
Okay, so the question is, AI presents new opportunities for fraud against consumers. So you gave an example of, for example, some of these companies that are using AI images for advertising. Other than the impact on the models and maybe the agencies that used to do the advertising bit, someone could also be using generative AI to make fake images of their product. So somebody, for example, like I remember recently on Twitter, somebody made a fake image of their landscaping work, and clearly, or maybe an architect gives rendered images from AI. He can't really deliver that. So that is, I think, one point to consider, especially on outright fraud, where somebody displays an image that is not a product of theirs. The other aspect of fraud on AI is these generative calls. So somebody gets a sample of your voice, generates some clip that sounds like you, and then maybe calls your family and says, "Oh, I'm in an accident," or "Nimeshikwa na polisi." send money to this number. But you see now, if it's somebody that sounds like you, becomes a bit harder to track. I have more questions on another topic. I don't know whether to raise them now or later.
Later. Let's just focus on this topic first. I'll give you an opportunity.
Okay.
All right, thanks. Anyone else? Okay, maybe I can read some of the questions so that you can take them together, Bwana Kamiti and Bwana Mureithi. So Eric Musau asks, what are your thoughts around some regulations vying to regulate AI and robotics practitioners? Is this really the right first step for the country? Also useful to note that AI and robotics is embedded and cross-cutting in almost all services. What does it mean for regulation? Then the third looks more like a comment, but I'll read it. How can entrepreneurs be supported to develop AI tools that can be used globally, as it seems we are already a few years behind and solutions are already being sold in the country in various sectors? So probably we can start with you, Bwana Mureithi, and then we can go to Bwana Boniface. Thanks.
Thank you, Fiona, and thank you to the participants in this event. Mine will be relatively simple. In terms of that misuse of the consumers, I think we can start also from the positive side, that AI gives us a lot of benefits. There's a lot of opportunity. The fact that some of these guys are misusing it shows just how deep the opportunities are. Now, the only challenge is that, again, they can also be misused. And that's where we were stressing, myself and Boniface, we need to come up with a framework on how to use it. And we talked about a lot of agencies talking about the struggle globally is responsible use of AI, trustworthy AI, and then AI for good. All this just based allowed the fact that despite all those benefits, opportunities AI provides, there's few of us who instead exploit this against the consumers, against the society, against, so we must, the only way we can be able to do that is we must sit as a country, discuss and come up with a framework to be able to handle this. But we also notice that this is not just within Kenya. There will be others outside the country who can do the same thing and do harm to this country. And that's why we are saying, even as we develop a framework for Kenya, we must align it and work with other countries in East African region, in Africa, and also globally to ensure that we are able to reduce or rather mitigate against misuse of AI. On the area of the law that is, the bill that is currently in Parliament, AI and robotics, my view is that for us to be able to develop this regulatory framework, we first of all need to come up with a policy where, what is the vision? How do we want to use AI? Which sectors do we want to, and what resources do we need over what timeline? Then as we do this, we now can be able to develop a regulatory framework that now that is able to assist us achieve the goals that we set out for AI. When we look at AI and robotics, I would say it looks narrow. It's looking at a very narrow spaces of AI, which is changing. And some of the key thing that is coming out of this or being proposed is a robotic society, that nobody, for example, can participate in AI evolution unless you are a member of the robotic society. That is crossing, shutting out a lot of innovation that can come out from those who may be non-members or cannot fit as members of the robotic society. So we need, first of all, to start up with, come up with a policy framework and a vision. For entrepreneurs, as I indicated there, those who are driving AI right now apart from few government agencies like KRA, like KEMRI, like in agriculture, a lot of the work that is being done to be able to harness AI and bring it into Kenya or use it for Kenyan development are startups. Startups face a lot of challenges in terms of skills, in terms of financing, in terms of market, in terms of recognition, and also there are also challenges of a regulatory framework under which they are going to operate. So it is very important, and that could be part of the vision and the aspects of the policy to be able to recognize those actors that are struggling to bring the benefits, tap the benefits of AI. And a way forward would be looking at how to support those who are already in that area, startups. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to echo those comments made by Mr. Muriuki. Definitely, the direction should first be the national policy. We should have a policy that is going to give us that whole framework, because what the policy does is that it will also be able to map out what's the current regulatory framework, which are the institutions or the government agencies handling AI or AI aspects of the law. Map them out so that we do not have agencies doing something here, doing something there, which is not coordinated. And when you talk about enforcement and coordination in terms of the regulatory framework to deal with the issues that Michael has brought out in terms of fraud, is that then how do we involve our police, the DCI, the national crimes or the cyber crimes units? Then we all and other government agencies like the Competition Authority of Kenya and the Communications Authority of Kenya need to be working together, and this can be done through that national policy that Mr. Muriuki has alluded to. Because fraud is not just within Kenya, but it is perpetuated also by citizens of other countries. Then it should have, then the framework should basically tell us this is how we are going to work with other agencies, and this is how they're going to help the country, or we are going to help those countries to deal with the issues that are happening. The fraud is definitely happening. We have seen that, like in Kenya, we are seeing fraud happening in terms of purchase, the e-commerce bit. That is what we are seeing, a lot of that. But in terms of the fake images about products, we have not seen yet. But it means that because AI, is constantly evolving, then that will start happening. In terms of the regulations to regulate AI and robotics, I think Mr. Muriuki has really dealt with that particular issue. And what has also caught my attention is that you have to be a member of the Robotics Society. That will definitely be a challenge, create a challenge for startups and new institutions that would want to get into this particular space. There's an aspect of the authority where we regulate activities of trade, of associations, or professional associations. And one of the things we say regarding professional associations is that it should not be some form of cartel. It should give the opportunity for others to come in and be members, because you see, when they do that, and what information are they sharing that would create or would be anti-competitive? So then, but the question has been dealt with adequately by Mr. Muriuki. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I can't see any other questions on the chat. So probably anyone who wants to ask the question directly. You do. Okay, can go ahead.
Can I ask? I just noted that you intimated that you have some position papers upcoming on consumer rights. And this is a part on the back on you and your team, but that should have come sooner. Actually, today would have been a good day to launch those position papers on consumer rights, to just mark this day. So when are they coming out?
Sorry, I was on mute. Those internal conversations that we are having in regards to this particular topic, but it's not just on the AI, but also generally on digital platforms and what they're doing in regards to consumer protection and also on competition issues. You see, a position paper from our perspective would lead to the development of a guideline. So I think in the near future, we should be able to engage you further and the stakeholders. Definitely will engage the stakeholders in this particular topic.
Okay, thank you so much. Michael, you can unmute and ask your question directly.
So mine is a comment on the, maybe we may not be able to regulate the companies that generate AI images, especially most of them are American. So, but I would suggest that there needs to be a watermark. If it's a video or an image that is AI generated, should be clearly labeled. This is an AI generated image. So maybe part of the policy recommendations could be, or maybe legal recommendations, if a business is using an AI generated image for advertising purposes, they should clearly label that this is an AI generated image. You know, something like the same way when somebody does an advert on, say, Instagram labels, this is a sponsored post, or this is a sponsor, so that it's clear where this image, so that someone does not misrepresent the products they have. So the owners should now be on the merchants on e-commerce platforms to label AI generated images as such.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that suggestion. All right, seeing that there are no more questions or anyone who's raised their hand, I would like to give a vote of thanks. So ladies and gentlemen, as we draw the curtains on this insightful webinar centered around the theme of fair and responsible AI for consumers, I would like to extend my sincerest gratitude to every one of you who has participated today and engaged us through this session. First, I would like to express our deepest appreciation to our panelists for their contributions, their expertise, their thought-provoking insights that they've shared today. I'd just like to say that your perspectives have actually shed light on AI, on consumer behavior, so some of those challenges and opportunities that it presents, as well as the imperative need for fair and responsible AI practices. Thank you so much for our audience, for your involvement. Your presence here has actually made this webinar a success. I'd also like to thank our team internally, the ERCP team, for organizing this, the technical and communication support team, who always support us and making sure our calls don't drop, and they send out as well invites, and they publicize the event. Thank you so much for that. And so yeah, for the rest of us, as we reflect on the discussions and insights that we've shared here today, I hope that we'll, in our own ways, just remain committed to advancing fair and responsible AI practices that then prioritize consumer welfare, protect privacy, and foster inclusivity and equality, in this digital realm. And I would also like to say that this vote of thanks was written by an AI platform. So thank you. Thank